back to the Boomerang podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He's the author of The Steal. He's on Frank TV and Lindell TV, and he's got his own show, The Joe Hoft Show, on Conservative Daily. You can see that on Rumble. And today we have the legend, Joe Hoft.
Hey, thanks, guys. Happy to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Well, it's funny because Drew and I, we work for Midas Gold Group, and, we're always, every morning, we're always like getting up, looking at stories, and it's always, we go to Gateway. Gateway's the go-to. And it's funny because I looked up Gateway on Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's so
toxic, isn't it?
It's terrible.
The first thing it says,
terrible.
Yeah. Propaganda, fake news,
conspiracy. It's just so toxic. It's unbelievable. So it really says how great Gateway Pundit is.
Yeah, Media Matters is no better. It's just like some terrible stuff that they say about you. It's funny because, like you mentioned, we read Gateway Pundit every morning, and over the years, it's like you eliminate the mainstream media because you actually want to get real news and actually want to hear what's happening. And so that's what I really appreciate. All your writers, they come on, and a lot of the stuff that people consider conspiracies, in my opinion, they're coming true.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's a terrible thing to be a conspiracy theorist anymore because they seem to be right quite a bit.
Yeah, how about it? Alex Jones is a genius, But I could tell you some stories about that even too, how spot on he was, how this guy could see things, and I think the Gateway Pundit as well. And maybe I could tell you a bit about my story and how I fit into the Gateway Pundit as well, if you'd like.
Please.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jim and I are twin brothers. We grew up in Iowa, so we're big. Right now, we're big Caitlin Clark fans.
Yeah.
Hopefully through the weekend, we'll see tonight. Iowa plays UConn. Never followed girls basketball before in my life. I just mentioned this on my show, and yet I just showed 2 clips of Caitlin Clark just burying that ball from way out, and it's so much fun. So, anything Iowa that's good, we're going to follow that. A lot of great people there. Grew up, had a good upbringing. Then I'm down in Florida now. And in between there, I lived in St. Louis as well as Jim, and I guess he was there first. And he started Gateway Pundit around 2004. And right before that, he decided to take up the bass, this big st-up bass. And I walked in his living room one day. He said, what's that? And then but we both were conservative at that time. We met some people in the 90s that kind of led us in that direction. And then we were watching Sean Hannity and Combs actually in the early 2000s. I couldn't stand that Combs guy at all. He was toxic. And then Bill O'Reilly. And we'd sit there and watch. And Jim, our mom was getting elderly and declining as the life cycle goes. And she moved in with Jim, and Jim took care of her. Jim was a single guy at that time. And during that time is when he also decided he kind of passed on the base after a couple years, but he started a website, and that was called the Gateway Pundit. And it was just a blog. He told me he started a blog, and there'd be 5 of us who would go out there and look at it. And it was me and a couple other guys when it started back in 2004. And but there was other blogs going on, and there was a couple bigger ones, like Michelle Malkin had a couple big websites. I think it was Hot Air. There's another guy at Insta Pundit, and they started liking some of the stuff Jim was writing. It was mostly overseas stuff, and so they'd link to him, and Jim would call me up and go like this on the phone. That meant an Insta launch, and because they had linked to one of his articles, and he was so thrilled when that happened, and those things kept him going. At the same time, he had a full-time job and working at an industry in St. Louis area, and I had a full-time job then too. I was over here in the corporate world working in finance and auditing and accounting. About that time, I joined a big firm in St. Louis that was growing internationally. So I had this opportunity to start traveling the world, and I did, and been around the world, and literally. And the company was growing. They wanted somebody to go out there and kind of validate for the board of directors what's really going on, and that was my job. And we had all these offices, not in Dubuque, Iowa, or Fort Dodge, Iowa. I was going to London and Montreal and Rio, not Rio, but Buenos Aires, Cape Town, South Africa, Madrid, Spain, all these incredible places. Australia, probably spent a year of my life there just on business trips, always downtown Sydney, right overlooking the Opera House. Been in board meetings in Sydney where you look out the window and right there's the Opera House, right there's the Sydney Harbor Bridge. I mean, just really got to see the world. It was really blessed. And at the same time, Jim was building this blog, it was called at first, and it became a website probably in around 2010. When Obama came in, then there was a lot of traffic, and what would happen was people started going to Gateway Pundit itself, and I think with Obama and just how really I say how horrible he was, just a lot more attention on conservative news, and the websites started growing. Breitbart was growing at that time. Western Journal. I just saw Floyd Brown a couple nights ago at Mar-a-Lago. He started Western Journal. He told me, yeah, he says I was second behind Gateway Pundit, and maybe even before Breitbart. And then Breitbart really took off, and then there's other sites. So these sites really they started to take off, and fast forward to 2016. By that time, I had gotten an opportunity in Hong Kong as a international corporate exec over there, overseeing an audit team. I did spend about 4 years overseeing a finance team, and in the U.S. where I was over the financial reporting for $1 billion block of business, multi-million-dollar blocks, real complex industry and complex structure. It was really I didn't do anything but work there for about 4 years, and literally my friends are saying, Joe, you got to get a different job. We never see you, and that led to an opportunity then in Hong Kong to go there for me around 2011. And that's what I did. I moved over there. It was great. Had been to Hong Kong, actually on a trip through Hong Kong, had met my wife. And so she was thrilled. She's Chinese. She was thrilled to go back to Asia. And so I was over there. Jim was in St. Louis working and then building his website. And then one day he stepped away from his job. He was making about twice as much at Gateway Pundit as he was his job. So he stepped away. And that was probably around 2012 or 13 or something. And then along comes Donald Trump. And we freaking loved that guy. We weren't really sure, but all he had to do is that first walk down the escalator in his first speech, and we're like all in because he was, the thing that I think most grabbed us was the fact that he was honest about the media. He was saying these guys are liars.
Yep.
Literally would use that word, and it was like hallelujah. Somebody is finally,
so refreshing.
Talk. It was the truth, and nobody at Fox News could say we can't use the word these people are lying. We'll just be all full of etiquette and stuff. It's like, no, these people lie, and then Trump's nobody was talking about the border wall. I think about 2016, or 15, nobody. Now it's the biggest thing out there. It's protection. It's this country. It's everything, and we've seen what frightening situations at our border since Biden came in. These terrorists crossing the border. So, anyways, fell in love with Trump, and then I started writing for Jim. I'm overseas. I've got a big job over there, traveling still throughout Asia Pacific, from Japan down to Mumbai, over to Sydney to New Zealand. And again, still kind of a great gig traveling around. Now I'm an executive. I'm going to a lot of board meetings, attending board meetings, attending audit committee meetings and risk meetings, and at this growing corporation. And it was great. I'm doing well. Jim's doing well in the States. We still talked about every day, even though we're 10,000 miles apart. And we talked a lot about politics. We both love Trump, and I'd follow the Gateway Pundit. And then one day I said, Jim, Ted Cruz is going to be eliminated in a month. And I had to figure it out. I just looked at the numbers. You should write something up, he said. And sure enough, put it up, and Drudge Report back then was king.
Yep.
And you get an article at Drudge, whether you're Time or Newsweek or New York Times or Washington Post, everybody wanted to get a link at Drudge, and then the headline was everything. And he put something up, not a headline, but off to the side, that Ted Cruz will be eliminated in a month, and it was my article. Jim calls me up, says, Joe, did you tell Drudge to put that up? I go, no, I don't know Drudge. And so sure enough, at the end of the month in April that year, big East Coast events, and Cruz was eliminated. There's just not enough delegates left for him to be able to win. And I was absolutely right. And I'm looking at the numbers, popping them into a spreadsheet, taking a picture, snapshot, sitting in Hong Kong as I arrive at work that morning, sending them to Jim. He's grabbing those, popping the whole piece together, and really in a matter of just minutes, we got the piece up, and Drudge put it up, top story. And the day before he put up my piece earlier, top story at Drudge. That was King of the World. That got me hooked. So that's when I started writing for Jim. And I did that for about 4 years. Trump wins. I'm in Australia. Tell you a quick story about that. I'm at a board meeting. Trump wins. I'm thrilled. I got a picture of me holding the MAGA flag in front of the Opera House. And then I went to a board meeting. This guy from Canada, he's a big lefty, but he knew I loved Trump. But he said, you got anything with Trump? I got this flag. I got this big flag. So we hung that up above over the window in the boardroom as we walk in for a dinner. Here's this big Trump MAGA flag. Make America great again. That thing lasted like 3 minutes. We had to take it down.
I can imagine.
Bunch of lefties. They're all lefties. Because they all get the information they get is just such garbage. I loved it. So I was happy I brought that to Australia. So along comes 2020, and a lot of work in between. I did a lot of research and reports on the Mueller gang. I was dropping bombs about those guys. They were so corrupted. Not many people were saying it. I came out, I think, the first to say this is a dirty cop. I had some dynamite articles about Mueller and what a sham it was. Up until that time, nobody would believe that the government would do something like what they were doing. It was a total coup d'etat. And of course, nobody's been held accountable, so they're doing it still. The thing was, then comes COVID, and I'm in Hong Kong. We'd been actually up near Wuhan on January 1st of 2020. My wife's family's up in that area, about 100 miles from Wuhan. I'd gotten sick actually in October for 5 days, went in the hospital with pneumonia. And I believe that was COVID, because this was October of 19, because I lost all taste, and it was wild. And anyways, they gave me an antibiotic and eventually found the right one that worked, and then I was out. So January 1st, we're in China. The mood there was way before here. So by the end of January, they canceled the Chinese New Year. And
which is huge.
That was a big deal.
That's a big
wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was huge. And then we saw these videos, guys dropping on the streets and crap like that. I never saw that. And then we then came, the masks and then working from home. And that was okay for a while, but then it kind of got old. I did not want to wear that mask. And I'm in Hong Kong. And then came the WHO, the World Health Organization, comes out, and that Tedros, and we started dropping some bombs on him. We were the first. I had some guys giving me some great information. All of a sudden, they knew I was a professional. I'd get these great tips from guys, and we knew that in Wuhan there was this entity there that had been working on bat research, et cetera. We were some of the first to drop those bombs, and that it wasn't from bat stew.
Right.
That was ridiculous. And then Tedros comes out and says it's 3.4% mortality, COVID. We're like, no way. It's worse than the Spanish flu from 100 years prior. And I looked at the numbers at that time at WHO, what the what Tedros was sharing. And, I'm an auditor, I'm a CPA, I've earned 10 degrees designations. I kind of know numbers and
Home
how to
field
look at
advantage.
things. And I looked at it and really, I swear to God, within 10, 15 minutes, I saw, no, this is bogus. He's, and he's manipulating the numbers. I'll just leave it at that. It's closer to the flu. And with the flu, and here's what he was doing. With the flu, we get so many people that go to the hospital with the flu, right? And some of those people die. It's about 3% might die from the flu each year. But that's just people in the hospital. What they do for the flu then is they say, well, yeah, but there's about 20 million people that got the flu that we don't know about. We don't have records on. We're going to estimate an additional 20 million. So really the flu is like a 0.06% mortality rate, something like that. What Tedros did was he didn't add in the additional 20 million. He's just counting the people in the hospital. And he's saying 3% of these people died. Oh my God. But that was a lie, because with the flu, we gross it up would be the term. And he didn't do that with COVID. And I wrote about that, and the whole world's freaking out at that time in March, early March. And we're all going to die. And I'm coming out with this piece. No, I think it's the same as the flu. And Alex Jones saw that. We put it up in Gateway Pundit, and he had Jim and I on the next day. And then, so we did. We went on, and he had another guy on before me arguing that we're all going to die. And then I came up with this, and it was kind of a bold prediction at that time. Nobody else was saying it. But I had looked at the numbers, and no, I think this isn't going to be that bad. It looks like it's closer to the flu. They're not, they're not. And even then, even that early, we knew kids were pretty much immune. Sick people were not in a good shape, and elderly. And that was the numbers were already, although small sample, we already knew that. And so I was on Alex Jones with Jim from Hong Kong. The next day, Media Matters, you mentioned Media Matters. They did a hit piece on me, and they said Joe Hoft, who lives in Hong Kong and works at this company in Hong Kong, was on with Alex Jones. And so that triggered some events at this company I'd worked at for 20 years, and loved this company. They loved me. I'd been around the world. I knew a lot of people just because I'd traveled so much around the world. And in the headquarters were in the States. And so I knew a lot of people, and loved it, loved the company. I've been there 20 years, was, made a really had a great career there. Like I said, I got to see the world through this position. And suddenly, thanks to Media Matters, this whole thing is now jeopardized. And within a month, I ended my career at this great corporation, ended up retiring. And that was because of Media Matters.
Yeah,
So
they are scum.
they are, you know what I mean? I didn't talk about it for a year or two because I didn't want them to have the satisfaction of knowing that they had succeeded in hurting me, And so, but now they're just so disgusting. They're such a disgusting entity. Why? The thing that we should really, I saw James Wood say this the other day on Twitter. People we should really be mad at are the Republicans, who aren't there as a counterbalance against these criminals, and that's what happened to me. And it's a shame. But the good news is I had my 20-year anniversary in July of 2019, and the head of Asia gets up and says, "Hey, the reason we're here today was a surprise party for me. It was a Friday afternoon. It's because Joe just had 20 years today." And he says all these wonderful things, and says, a lot of people don't get over the States, Joe, and their impression of the US is really, TV or you. And he goes, you give them a great impression. I'll never forget that. And he says, and then we love you. I mean, I get choked up about every time I say that. And then the COO for all of Asia got up and said the same thing. We love you. What a moment. And I've got I ended up they gave me a gift, and it's actually behind me here. It's this picture of me and Trump. And it says, "Happy 20th, anniversary, Joe, President Trump." And it's a picture of Trump shaking my hand. But what they did is they superimposed my face over Xi Jinping's. The whole place broke up, and it was funny. It was great. Thank God that was 6 months before this interview with Alex Jones, because that was my parting gift, and it was beautiful. They freaking loved me, and I loved them. And so I look back and really thank God for that day and that moment, because it was really sweet. They all knew I loved Trump. After Trump won, I brought in a bunch of cupcakes into the office for everybody for lunch. Like, man, I was fired up. So anyways, that then led for me back to the States. And by this time, Jim, who single-handedly ran the Gateway Pundit basically in 2016, rated top 3 or 4 conservative websites that was combating the lies from the legacy media, ABC, CBS. There was a study done. I think it was backed by Soros or maybe the CIA or maybe both. And it showed these numbers, and that's when they realized we've got to do something about conservative media. That the censorship was unbelievable. After that, I did a study for Jim, got the data, and we determined that 1 year after the 2016 election, 95% of the volume on the top 10 conservative websites was gone on Facebook.
Yep.
And some of these, their whole model, their business model was Facebook. So they just died. And that's what they started to do to us then. And now we're finding out that our government was involved. And even during the Trump years, our government's paying for the censorship, paying Twitter, and God knows how much to Facebook. And, that was just a small piece. Now we're seeing the State Department, the military paying these false fact checkers that would challenge us so that they could throw this garbage up at Wikipedia. Just toxic stuff that's happening from our government. And that's what that whole Missouri case is about, the Missouri, Louisiana case against the government, because that's not legal. Our government should not be involved in censoring anyone. That's against the Constitution. And Gateway Pundit's a big part of that. And I think a lot of my articles were a big part of that, because I was dropping bombs. I come back here and I'm working for the Gateway Pundit full-time with Jim, and we just start ripping it apart. Man, I had some guys reach out to me, some sharp guys during the election, that top guy at a big 4 firm in accounting reach out. We just started dropping bombs. Another guy who's got AI back in 2020, and we're validating and verifying stuff using AI. We were dropping bombs. And with my ability, years of doing auditing and finance in the corporate world, it was like, man. And that's what it's all about. And that's why I've written 3 books now on the steel. They're behind me, red, white, and blue. But in the white book, I kind of said it's titled "The Impossible Occurs." First book's the red book about setting the stage. Trump wrote me a nice note, sent me a nice letter on the first book, said, great read, look forward to the next ones. And that was cool. So I mentioned that in both my second and third book, of course. And then in the second book, though, what I say is, from a professional standpoint, from a CPA and a guy's been involved in numbers my whole life, overseeing a $1 billion block of business. There were financial reporting on $1 billion, multi-million. This election never should have been certified. Right. We have standards in the corporate world. You guys have standards. You guys, you've got to make sure that your numbers are supported. You got to make sure they're transparent, that the auditors can come in and see whatever they want. And they want to validate your system. They want to validate everything. It's got to be perfect. If there's any questions, they're not signing off. And a tremendous amount of work and energy and money is spent validating financials around the world by auditors. They better be clean. If you sign off on some financials that end up being garbage, you're liable. Yep. And bad things can happen. So that's the real world. That's the corporate world. In our elections, it's an absolute joke. We can't see the systems. There's not support for the entries. We don't know where some of these numbers came from, and people involved are definitely shady. Everything about them is broke. It should never have been certified. That's my point that I realized in the second book as I'm putting all this evidence together. This thing never should have been certified. That's why it was stolen. And my third book then is on the cover up. And I just, my thesis there was that the amount of energy that they took cover up this steal, they spent as much energy and time and money and, dedicated to the cover up as they have the actual steal. I mean, look at January 6th. What the hell was that? Looking back, that was now it was strategically done. It was and really it's a CIA military op against the United States. It's the
Yes.
color revolution against the US because they needed that so that people wouldn't focus on the election. Now we're going to get our media to push this narrative that we're all bad, we're all violent. There wasn't a single violent act in all of Trump's rallies in 2020. I know of none. I followed him every day. There was some violence in 2016. He figured out a way to fix that. And we found out later those were people paid for by Hillary Clinton, literally paid for. We knew that. I mean, this is the sinister stuff these lefties do. So, yeah, and I think I'm the only guy that did this. I kept track of the rallies for Biden and Trump. I did the same for for Trump and Hillary. Trump crushed Hillary. That's why we knew that Trump had a great chance. He was crushing her in rallies. He was crushing her on social media. Now we couldn't seriously. Trump actually there was a Hillary for I forgot the exact term. Hillary for jail or something like that. Some account up there for prison.
Yeah.
That got more hits than even Hillary, and so Trump was crushing them both. So we could see through social media, this is not just us. This is a phenomenon. There's a lot of people behind this guy. We predicted Trump would win, and he did. We couldn't do the same study there with the numbers from social media because they, broken Facebook and Twitter so bad. It was, you can't trust the numbers. They're censoring everything. Yeah.
No.
Right. So, but we could look at rallies, and Trump had 1.1 million people at his rallies compared to about 2,000 people for Joe Biden.
Yeah. It's hard to get anybody.
You know what I mean?
Basement.
She was having those coughing fits. Remember, she kept having the coughing fits.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
bizarre.
It's crazy.
The whole thing was just weird.
It was weird. It was, and then they, he comes up with 81 million ballots. They never expected Trump to get 74 million. He blew them away again. And then these numbers are totally ridiculous. And now we know. And so much fraud, so much, shenanigans. Clearly, even if people don't, clearly there's enough evidence that this thing should have not been certified. And I just heard Harry Hari was at an event this week. They're trying to take away Jeffrey Clark's law license in DC. And people are saying that Clark could be the next attorney general, under Trump. And he's a brilliant guy. And he's asking people to pray for him, by the way, because yesterday morning I actually texted him. He came back and, thanked me for whatever I shared with him. And he said, just pray for me, man. I thought, that, I was, he actually said it, I don't forget how he said it, but, I just thought I was, doing the right thing by saying, hey, there's some stuff here that doesn't make sense. And a lot of people, the DOJ didn't have the courage to do that. He was strong enough to do it. So now he's going to be punished in the DC bar. These pompous, I'll say asses are sitting there, listening to all this evidence that absolutely proves that you would never certify this election if you were based on corporate standards all over the place. And then at the end, these guys say, well, they're indicating they're going to have to take away his bar license. And I just, this is disgusting. This isn't the American. What's that?
Look at Tina Peters.
She's
same thing. She's got all the dirt on Dominion, and they want to put her in jail for the rest of her life. They tried to take her house.
Yeah, it's horrible stuff, right?
Horrific.
And but it's part of the coup. It's part of the color revolution that we used on other countries. Now it's being used against us, and they hate Trump. They hate this guy.
Too, about it's not even just liberals or Democrats, the Republicans that were in on that as well. And
Oh, yeah.
it's led me to believe or ask the question, because at one point I was excited like Bill Barr, and now at the end of it, I'm like, ugh, or
That
Mike
is so right.
Pence, right? It's just,
Right.
was it a fatal mistake of who he, built his cabinet around, or did these, did they turn during the administration and how these people get turned? It's just, I'm always, curious how people come on strong and then it's like, wow, we completely misjudged them to the point where, they're sabotaging their own party. I mean, he worked for the Trump administration. You would think at the very least he would have a bias toward that administration.
Right. No, you're right. And Trump trusted these guys. He ended up picking Pence because he thought that would bring the party together. Nice guy. Pence comes across as a nice Christian man. I don't believe that anymore. I think he's a snake.
Right.
And I base that that changed on one day, January 6th, when he sends out this memo while Trump is talking up on top of the hill. After he said all week, "Well, I haven't made up my mind." Clearly, he had. This memo wasn't drafted in 15 minutes. Been a lot of thought put into this 3-page memo, and then he certifies this election. That was absolute. He was part of it. And then I start looking back at Michael Flynn, General Flynn, and how I actually wrote about this that day. And Flynn came back and said, "Right on," because Pence, if you remember, Pence and Priebus were the two people that went against Flynn to get rid of him. There was an attack on Flynn to get him out of Trump's presidency right away.
Yep.
And he was targeted. And Pence was a part of that. So then you start looking back. He was a part of the COVID team that brings in Fauci and pushes this lunacy across the country of masks and social distancing and scaring the hell out of people. We're all gonna die. It was all garbage. And then pushing these vaccines that I think are toxic as well. There's enough evidence out there to say I'm glad I didn't take it,
Me too.
nor my family.
Yeah.
So I think the problem for Trump was he believed that the party would come back together, that he could win this election, be the outsider, and these people would come in and join him in making America a better place. And he was wrong. These people came in. I think Priebus was trusted a lot. He brought in a bunch of bad people into the cabinet. And Trump didn't know anybody. He's an outsider. And these guys were nasty, some of them. And like Bill Barr, you mentioned, I too thought he was great when he came in. I thought, he's gonna bring the bill. Was that it? Some statement like that.
But Trump almost did us a better service because now we know who the enemy is.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
Now we know who they are. So it's
Yeah.
obvious. It's like all you have to do is ask these clowns, what's your opinion on January 6th prisoners? Right? And let them respond.
Yeah.
Their response will dictate
Yeah.
if you support them or not.
Amen. And what we've seen with January 6th, with, like you said, with Tina Peters and others, this is outrageous. This is stuff communist regimes, the censorship, this stuff is so sinister. Jeffrey Clark, I got, fired up this morning, wrote a piece at joehoft.com. I started a website over there where I'm like, this is outrageous. This is communism. This is what you do to the communists do to people that are attacking them. It's outrageous. You can't even believe this is our country. And then to think that Biden's allowed how many bad people into this country? Millions. We don't know.
A whole
There's
army
cells around the country.
And we're in Arizona.
It's scary.
We're in Arizona.
Yeah.
So we're
It's getting a little crowded, Joe.
getting a little crowded.
I bet it is. Are you in the Phoenix area or no?
Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, half the people there are. So
We see it. We go to the
Yeah.
airport. I went to the airport. I literally see a line of people. They're clearly illegals. And instead of having a suitcase, they got a bag of potato bag that you buy in the grocery store. The big thing. It's a sack.
Yeah.
And that's how they're traveling around with this stuff. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, like, they're getting seated on the plane first. I'm just sitting like, what is going on?
Yeah, they get seated first. I remember a few years ago, I'd walk in and I'd usually had a bunch of miles and I'd fly for an upgrade into first class, and they're all taken with them. To me, clearly some people that aren't from America, And I'm like, what's going on here? Why are these airlines doing this? I've paid a lot of money to this airline to fly, and they're putting these people up front. It's outrageous. It's so outrageous. And we're all sitting back like, is anybody going to stop this? Because right now, nobody. And that's the problem. This these Republicans say these things, they think, oh, this is so great. And oh, look, and we caught this guy in a pickle, or that girl who's at the White House is just an idiot. Oh, look, or Kamala Harris said something stupid. Hey, great. They're destroying your country. What are you going to do about it? You know?
I work with a group out here, Joe. I don't know if you heard of her, Nikki Klon, but she's going to these board of supervisors and serving them. She's got a program called Bonds for the Win. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but she's going
You
to
have to send me information on this after the show too. That'd be
They
great
actually asked me, they asked me to ask you if you might give it some coverage at the board of supervisors down here, where she's literally going after their bonding, and she's serving them $21 million lawsuits of personal liability, because these people are not elected, they've never sworn an oath, and here they are passing laws and rules, right? They can't do that.
That's great. No, that's great. And I think that's I mentioned Harry Hari was on I had him on my show yesterday. He's done a lot of work in cybersecurity realm, and he, he's like, hey, if you look at these laws, and he also, I guess, was involved in the HAVA Act or something. A friend of David, through David Clements, I met Harry, and he was there testifying for Attorney Clark the last couple of days in DC. Online he was, but he says, that's it. We're not adhering to our laws, both federal and state. And he says this is a big problem because now it brings in civil rights and the Civil Rights Act and all sorts of stuff. And this is a problem for those people that aren't adhering to the law, because now they're liable through these various acts that are out there, and they are individually liable. They can't hide behind the government and say, you can't come get me. I'm whatever. That's not real. And Hari is it's great. It's there's a group out there in Arizona, that's challenging people. It's get it based on the law. And so good for them. People that are doing it, good for them. We have to. These people have to stand up. Here's the thing. None of these people are qualified to validate an election. I mean, you've got to be a super smart IT auditor or cybersecurity expert to sign off on these, and nobody is. Most of these supervisors are, old ladies that have been doing this for years. Some of them, I think, really want to do a good job. Some of them want their party to win. But overall, they don't even have close to the skill sets it's needed to certify elections using all these machines. So we shouldn't be using machines. I've had a guest on my show from Italy saying, one day to vote, we come in, we drop off our ID at the front door, as well as this card that we get. It's like a little passport, it sounds like. You go, you vote, you come back, they stamp your passport so that they know that you voted. You can't vote again. You are checked off on their list, their voter roll, and you get your ID back and you go. It's all in one day. It's done at whatever 8 o'clock at night. And the only exception to that is military. They are allowed absentee ballots. Other than that, good luck. You're not voting.
Right.
And they know their results by 10 o'clock that night. And this is what we did for years here. And some scoundrels slowly have crept in and slowly added more and more to this process, where it's not just it's unauditable, but it's not in compliance with the laws, and the results are therefore skewed, and there's no transparency. Everything's broke, and that's kind of been my position for since really looking into this stuff. And then when you see all the outrageous stuff like the January 6th and these people, 4 people died that day, so a lot of people don't know that. And they said 5 cops died that day, and that's an absolute lie. And so our media is just so full of lies. And you guys have probably seen like Tucker Carlson's interview with Mike Benz recently. I don't know if you have, but I tell you what, it's about an hour long, but it's probably one of the best hours you'll ever spend. He lays it all out and puts all these pieces together. It basically says, wherever you see the CIA, you'll see the State Department and the military. They're walked together. So he talked about Ukraine. And then he talks about all these connections. And then he talks about how basically they are going against the American people now. This is the CIA and the state and the military that's coming against us. And I've talked to somebody. I started a group where we're trying to figure out ways to protect our next election. And one guy says this feels like a military, the election process. It's not, and that makes sense. It's so
Did.
complicated. It's and it's so devious. It's really, it is part of a color revolution to ultimately destroy this country. And our CIA is behind it.
Do you know Chris Jersky?
Yes,
So
real well.
I spoke to Chris maybe a month ago. And I mean, what he
Yeah.
found just canvassing, they were changing
Yeah.
the names of the streets. It was only because he lucked out
Yeah.
that he actually got to the address, and the street name that they had changed it to just for that temporary period of time. They had a piece of mail to show that it was actually sent there. Right? Just
Yeah.
these guys that are so sophisticated at rigging these elections.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next question. What do you see happening in 24? Do we even have an election in 2024? I don't think so.
What do you think? What do you think would happen instead of an election? I'm just, I don't know. A war?
They would postpone it somehow. I mean, how they would do it, I just
like starting like Ukraine, like, hey, we're going to allow them into NATO. All of a sudden we go into wartime.
Yeah.
Biden says, you know what, wartime powers, right? Because the whole thing is that, they always take powers, they just never give them back, right? Like income tax or like how we vote now because of COVID, right? They use COVID to change the voting process and mail in ballots and create all these opportunities to make it so complicated that you could rig an election because nobody would understand the legalities and the processes, right? So when I say maybe not have an election, maybe postponed or it's, I just, do you think,
Yeah.
November
Postpone indefinitely, right? Well, that's what Zelensky did in Ukraine, right?
Exactly right.
Stuff
Exactly.
the elections there. And then you saw the pictures lately, all these people that are in top in Ukraine, their big homes around the world.
Yeah,
I believe there's some indication that a property in Florida is owned by Zelensky, a multi-million-dollar home.
I believe it.
Yeah. So yeah, we've thrown money over there. Nobody knows where it's going. It's not audited. God knows how much ended up in Hunter's, in his hands. I mean, there's so many corrupt people. All these people that went over there over the last 10 years since the color revolution there. And even Mueller was over there. Hillary, yeah, Republicans, McCain and
Yep.
Lindsey Graham, and these scoundrels. So what's going on over there? Is it just a big old money laundering scheme? And I think it is.
How do you
I
launder
also
100
think
billion? Ukraine it.
yeah, well, you know how I think you do it is you get a young guy at FTX to, create this
Sam
company,
Bankman-Fried.
probably maybe CIA developed and just shove money through there and nobody knows where it's going. You exchange it to various currencies, and by the time it comes out the other end in US dollars, you have no idea how it got there.
Yep.
And that's what's happened. And millions and millions. And I see what's his name? SBF. He's in prison. I wonder if he's going to make it. I think he probably foolishly thought they were going to let him go, but no, he knows too much. So chances are he'll probably be like Whitey Bulger and end up dead someday, and that'll be it. And that's this corrupt entity, the CIA and whoever else that's working. I'll tell you what, I put this piece up here recently. I said, looking at Ukraine, I wrote this a couple years ago, and then Mike Benz comes out and says, "Hey, CIA's in Ukraine, working with the State Department, working, with the military," and I go back to this piece I wrote back around 2000, was they were trying to come up with this impeachment on Trump. Remember that? About this as we look back, guys. When Trump comes in, they immediately attach him to Russia. The immediate, and they're threatening a war with Russia from the start.
Yep.
They're saying Russia, Trump worked with Russia. Total lie. We all knew it then. We're like, that is such a lie. Hillary brought it up in one of the debates, if you remember. And Trump, there's indicate Trump's, tied to, he's a Putin fan. And you're like, what the hell is she talking about?
Sure.
Trump's never been over there. He's standing there thinking we've got a country, didn't realize the monsters that were really behind the scenes, this deep state. And so then they attach Trump to Putin from the very start. And then as soon as he makes a call with Ukraine, boom, there's an impeachment. They couldn't let him get close to Ukraine to dig in there to see what really was going on. And I wrote this piece in early 2000, before the election, long before, where I say, look at all the people over there. We got the Pelosi's, we got Romney's,
Kerry.
we've got Clinton's, Biden's. You mentioned somebody else?
John Kerry.
Oh, Kerry, and yeah, his family. it's what was going on there. And now we know that, well, the CIA was over there. But the other person that I mentioned in a separate piece was George Soros.
Yeah.
So here's the piece that I put together recently as well. And I'm throwing this out there. Is George Soros connected to our CIA, which is connected then, to all these villains? Is that what's going on? Is Soros, in a sense, is Soros running our CIA? I mean, Soros was over there to try to get this gas and oil money. And that's what Ben said in this interview with Tucker. Says it was all about the gas. They were trying to replace Russia's hold on gas and oil with Europe because it's tremendously profitable, and instead move Ukraine's oil and gas as the replacement.
Right.
And that's why they had to attack Russia. And that's why, and that's what Ben says. The CIA is always connected to corporate. It actually started from a corporate lawyer back in the 1940s. So he lays all this out in all these pieces, and it makes sense. And that's why they villainized Putin. They're promoting Zelensky, who's, I think, a monster. He's a liar. And that's why they couldn't let Trump get near Ukraine and figure out what's going on there. And that's why we continue to ignore these crimes of Hunter Biden. And that's what Benz was saying too. He says, I've been saying this for a while. Hunter Biden is somehow connected to the CIA. He was put on this board of directors at Burisma, and Burisma is this oil and gas giant in the Ukraine. The reason he's there is perhaps this connection to the CIA. So the CIA can run that, and all this money's flowing then. And it's all money. CIA is a big money generator as well. And so I didn't know that. I didn't know, what that was all about. So what's going on? And I think we know it's just so much corruption in our government, and we've all been fooled. And it's all, it's a lie.
It's wild. It's always the projection, it's like every time I hear, the Biden administration say like, this is for democracy, I just know I'm like, no, these are the guys trying to destroy democracy, to destroy the moral fabric, of our country and what we stand for. And, one thing that got past me, I think it took me a long time to realize, but brilliant on like the George Soros side is, and now we're seeing it, is these local elections for DAs, right? Because you brought up like, how do these things happen? It's against the law. But if you're picking and choosing which laws to go after, right? And, if you're just not going to enforce the laws, what's it matter if there's a law in the book for that? And that's where, it's just, multi-pronged attack on America. I can't stand this.
And that's what Biden did, or Obama. Obama started choosing laws. Some he'll enforce, some he won't. He'll have these cities that anybody can live in. You can be an illegal. You can come into the country. You're illegal. This stuff, it was just, and we're going to give billions to Iran. I mean, this was insanity. And then, we're going to spy on President Trump, spy on other Americans. We're going to spy on everybody. And we're going to claim that we have the right to do it. And we are going to create a coup d'etat to remove the next administration because of fear they might really find out what's going on. And so that's we've had to live through this last 4 or 5, now 8 years. It's been a nightmare. It's been a nightmare for the American people. I wake up just some days, seriously, there was one night, there were some lights outside my place. I'm thinking, well, I guess the FBI is finally here, not because I've done anything wrong. It's because I've done everything right.
Right. Yeah.
And it's outrageous. Jim and I are getting sued right now in Georgia.
I mean, yeah, just the lawsuits, and just even if they're frivolous, you still got to defend yourself, which costs money and time.
Lots of money. And then you get an insurance, and then your insurance goes up, and it's all, God knows how much money Trump's had to spend, $500 million in legal fees. I don't know. And that's what they always use, the federal government as well. They don't pay for this.
Yeah, right.
It's coming from the federal government. We're paying for their
We're paying for it, the taxpayers.
So sinister, but so well thought through. If you wanted to do this from a sinister point of view, I'm going to have the government pay for it.
Yep.
I'm gonna lie about you all day long. I'm going to have the media totally in my pocket. They're going to say whatever I want them to say, like little puppets, and I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, because there's no accountability anymore. And that's what we've seen since the Biden Obama years. Trump never had control over the government. Looking back, it's like, no, we thought he was running the government, but we didn't realize, no, Barack Obama's crooked and corrupt CIA, NSA, all these groups were all against Trump.
Yep.
And they were against us. They were ultimately
They
against
never
us. So
expected him to win. It completely threw off their whole plan.
no.
Joe,
And when
doesn't
he
this-
put that one, remember that one tweet he puts out where he says, "They're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in their way."
best
That
meme ever.
it's
So powerful.
looking back, you're like, my God, because now they're coming after us. Like I said, Jim and I are being sued for reporting on election night the video from Georgia, where we just report what's in that video. And we're getting sued by Ruby and Shay for doing that. The mother-daughter team that was there that night that counted these ballots after all observers have left. And so our sin is reporting that. No mention of what they did, no mention about the video that we uncovered that was just public that we saw that Rudy Giuliani shared. We're not supposed to say that. Don't we know that?
Right.
And that's what's happening. It's nightmarish communism, and we've got to stand up and be strong against these monsters, because really ultimately they're cowards, they're weak, they're puppets, and they'd run like little sissies if they really ever get caught.
They
They'll
want to hide in the
cry
shadows.
and play the victim, and they're just little sissies, and we need to remember that. They've got this government, but we've got to stand up. We've got to win this next election. I don't know if I ever answered that. There's a lot of things that still need to be done. Yes, Chris Jersky and his team's working with me and some others, and we're gonna clean up the voter rolls. We're gonna clean them up.
Is Mark Cook involved with you at all?
Not on our team, but I know who Mark Cook is, and he's been working in some other areas. We've got another there's another group that we're aware of that's really doing some great work legally, that they're going to start challenging just exactly kind of what this individual you mentioned in Arizona. It's time to start challenging people to adhere to the law. And if you're not adhering to the law, then you need to be held accountable. And we're going to see more lawfare between now and then and the election. And we also need to train people. We're going to put together some videos and documents to provide to people so they can get some ideas on what they can do and how they can do it. And then I still think there's work to be done to prevent this steal. There's just so much out there now. Like this guy said, it's a military op and it's against the American people. And we've got to get real smart and not be naive into thinking that we're gonna flood them with that. Trump said this 2 nights ago. I was in Mar-a-Lago with Kerry Lake's event. And he said, well, we're going to flood them so bad that there's no way they can steal. Well, we flooded them pretty bad in 2020, and they still stole it and claimed that senile Joe Biden, who lived in his basements and had circles at his rallies, somehow pulled out 81 million, even though nobody's there. I saw a video, by the way, guys, and he was in Arizona recently. He's cruising down the street, all these cars, not a single person gave a damn. There was two people walking down the street. They didn't even know that he was there. Nobody does. Nobody cares. He's a scoundrel. Nobody likes the guy. He's senile. Everybody knows it's a joke.
Yep.
And everybody knows he's not running this country, nor is Kamala Harris. And that's really scary. And anybody that is running the country now, and if it's not Joe Biden, which we know it's not because he just doesn't have the function, they should be arrested and thrown in freaking jail. Absolutely. That's not legal. That's not what our country's about. We voted in a president, and this is terrorism against the American people. It's outrageous.
Joe, I'd love to get your team, the Gateway team, out here for some of these Board of Supervisors meetings and get some coverage on it.
Well, that'd be cool. Well, keep in touch. Let me know. Give me some, outside of this, give me some information and we'll see what we can do. Yeah. Appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Anything you want to add?
No, thank you. Keep trucking. I appreciate all the content you guys put out. Again, we read your guys' material every day, and it correlates quite a bit with what goes on in our world and what people are worried about and concerned about. So really appreciate that. And
well, before we go, guys, how does somebody either protect themselves or make money in this environment?
I mean, I think physical gold, physical silver, it's not really an investment, right? It's more of it's a store of value. And I think you're going to have a lot of problems, when these boards of supervisors start going down and you really start shaking up the deep state, because these guys are going to go down. People are sick of it. They're going to take down their institutions with them. The same entities you talked about, right? The banks are part of it too. They're all in on the gig, right? So I think, you want to store your money in something that is going to be seen as money. I think there's going to be a lot of problems in the banks.
Outside the system.
Outside the system, right.
People get worried about like a CBDC, digital currency, right? But what if you just wake up and the banks convert, you have 75K in the bank, but it's now worth, 49,000 CBDC, right? That now has an expiration date. You can't use it at, outside of a certain mile radius of your zip code, right? That's all stuff that they do in China. And that I feel like now we're trying to copy them in certain ways.
Yeah.
Trump said hyperinflation is going to kill the economy. Trump's the truth teller. Listen to what that guy said.
Isn't he? You're right.
Just listen to him.
He is. He is.
And if you look at gold, gold, silver prices going up pretty rapidly over the last month or two. And in my opinion, the only time that really happens is when something is deeply wrong with our money. And obviously, printing $1 trillion every 100 days and just all the excessive spending, there's there's no reason to save. Like it used to be you save some money in the bank. Well, the longer you save it, the less valuable it is, the less purchasing power you have, right? And so, I think that's just, it's never an all or nothing, but I think it does make sense to take a percent of your wealth, put it into something that's a storage of value, as Matt said, protect that, get it out of the system where they can't delete it electronically. It's not just some digit on a computer screen. And then there's, of course, other things, but for the average person to go out and just buy another property is quite a lift.
The CIA will cyber attack our own banking system in order to give them plausible deniability. And then they're going to point the finger at Putin and say it was Russia's fault.
Right. Right. Who can trust anything anymore? You got to really be discerning. No doubt. Guys, thanks so much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to come back sometime.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.